Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And taxation is theft, it's extortion, it is basically this organized crime racket we call government taking our money, stealing it from our paychecks through all sorts of different things, through inflation, through carbon taxes, through the million taxes we see in Canada today, to fund things like, paying off the interest on the debt and, really badly constructed roads and all sorts of terrible things that we didn't ask for. Inefficient because it's a government and there's no incentive for true competition and innovation and doing a good job. There's no real good productivity. It's all garbage. And our money is stolen and impoverishes the masses in order to make that happen. Aren't we so lucky? Well, there is recent news out of Canada. If you thought taxes were already too high, well, guess what? They're about to get higher. Because as this article from CTV News Vancouver says, 2019 tax hikes, from gas to pensions, BC residents will pay more. And as the article goes into, at the stroke of midnight, it's going to become more expensive to live in BC, as if it isn't already expensive enough. The carbon tax, gas tax, and medical service plan premiums are all in flux. And while residents will pay less in some areas, they'll still be paying more overall. As the calendar turns to 2019, governments will be looking to generate more revenue. How much more will you pay? The Canadian Taxpayer Federation reported that the average single person in BC earning $30,000 a year will pay an extra $85 over last year, while someone earning $60,000 to $90,000 will pay less than $50 more. Two-income family making $60,000 will pay just $26 more, while a family bringing in $200,000 will pay an extra $78. The only group examined by the CTF that will pay less in 2019 than in 2018 are two-income families making less than $30,000. The Federation estimates they'll pay about $670 less in 2019. Looking at where those estimates come from, CTV News chose the example of a two-income family making about $120,000 a year. The family will pay an extra $196 for the Canada Pension Plan, but will pay $34 less for employment insurance, according to the CTF. They'll also pay $33 less for federal income tax, $11 less in provincial income tax, and $23 less for their MSP. With all the increases and decreases factored in, they'll pay about $94 more next year in BC, slightly less than the national average of $98. Other taxes and increases. The BC government will begin phasing out MSP premiums, replacing them with a new employer health tax. The change means businesses and even municipal governments must now bear the cost for their workers. And I quote, "Of course we know that City Hall doesn't generate its own money. It takes money from property taxpayers," said Chris Sims, BC director of the CTF. So a lot of people are going to be surprised with their property tax hikes this year. The city of Vancouver has cited the EHT as one reason for a 4.5% property tax increase. In addition to the other increases and decreases, BC homeowners of properties valued between $3 million and $4 million will pay an extra 0.2% school tax on the portion of their home above $3 million. For example, owners of a $3.5 million home will be subject to an additional tax on $500,000. Those with homes assessed at a higher value will pay a 0.4% tax on the portion of their property worth more than $4 million. So I want to also say something here. They're saying, $3 and $4 million homes. I think that qualifies for people on welfare in Vancouver at this point. It's so insane. We see these comments about how the national average is $98 more, and they talk about, they'll decrease taxes in this way, increase it in this way. Look, even if they decrease taxes on income, people are still paying a lot more if you counter in inflation, if you counter in the carbon tax, which is a tax on everything, business taxes, fuel taxes, property taxes, which basically tells you you have no property rights, you have no property, the government owns your property, one of the most intrinsic, most important forms of individual liberty is your own ability to own property, folks. And we know what's going on with property in BC as prices and the property bubble just skyrocket, and there's so many problems that we need to factor in there, because I got to go to this other article here before we get into all the ramifications of this huge issue as people are paying more and being more impoverished, and we head towards possibly a yellow vest tax revolution here in Canada. But as this Huffington Post article says, first-time home buyers in BC needed help with down payment 83% of the time in 2018. A majority of notaries say they are seeing a decline in the number of first-time buyers. And as the article goes into, without some help from their parents, those looking to buy a home in BC in 2018 weren't having much luck, a new report suggests. According to the BC Notaries Association, 83% of first-time buyers in the province received assistance with their down payment in 2018, up from the 57% who got a helping hand in 2015. And I quote, "While it's great to see that many first-time buyers are finding ways to get their first home, increased restrictions and the potential for higher interest rates is making some cautious or decide to wait on the sidelines to mass more of a down payment," said Daniel Boissevaire, president of the BC Notaries Association, in the 2019 real estate report. And you see this chart here, first-time buyers 2015 and 2018. It says a lot. And meantime, 59% of notaries surveyed for the report say they saw the number of first-time buyers decrease, with only 13% reporting an increase and 28% noting no change. So what are the major challenges for first-time home buyers who appear to be getting pushed out of the BC market? Well, unsurprisingly, 76% of notaries surveyed agree that home prices are an issue in their local market, with 20% saying prices aren't an issue and 4% claiming no opinion. So who are these 20% that are saying that prices aren't an issue? Seriously, when you're looking at prices in Vancouver, who on earth is saying, oh yeah, prices aren't an issue, it's only like $4 million for a detached home, no biggie here? There's a huge issue that we need to examine here, because BC is one of the hardest hit by this massive issue of centralization, market manipulation, housing bubbles, the everything bubble that is affecting people on a global basis. We are seeing issues with derivatives. We are seeing the issue of collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps and mortgage-backed securities, fractional reserve lending, interest rates going up to the point where we might, see a major calamity in the near future. These are all things we've seen before, folks. We've seen this going back in 2008, 2007. We saw this before, and this time it's no joke. This is a global issue, and it will affect everyone. John, let's go into what on earth is happening to the province of BC and Canada in general as we see all of these problems arise.
Well, there's no surprise, Josh, that BC is having problems. They have a big government, first of all. And with big government, that's when you actually have the problem coming with mass amounts of taxation. And that is the problem here. It's a lot of taxes, but it's not that bad when it comes to Canada in general. When you actually look at taxes in Canada versus the rest of the world, Canada is far down the list on income tax, for example. They're way down at like 50th place or something. So that's not the biggest issue, but you can see because of the high inflation in the currency, in the Canadian dollar that we've seen a massive loss versus the US dollar in value. That has a lot to do as well. So you've seen a lot of hidden inflation that hasn't come out through the actual reports, through the financial system. So that's a major one, Josh. And then of course, like looking at like this is how crazy it is. I'm gonna just show you some of the top socialist countries in Europe versus Canada. So Canada had 33% income tax. Well, Sweden has an average of 61.85%, while Denmark has 55.8%. You have Finland at 51.6%, Netherlands 52%. All these countries have way higher taxes than Vancouver, but the Vancouver housing market has a massive inflation built into it because of all the cheap money, all the money that came in from China, and it's pushed prices up. And I wrote about it in my book, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, ? where you had just a yearly gain of over 20% in Greater Vancouver area. That is just insane to actually sustain housing market with supply and demand. It's utterly nuts, and it's so unsustainable that it's beyond belief. This whole market in Vancouver and surrounding areas, it's all getting worse and worse by the day, because everybody that's getting into the housing market, if they are going to be indebted through their teeth, and they're never going to be able to pay back the loans, many of them. This is at the low level that we have interest rates at now. It's near to nothing compared to what it was in the 80s. When our parents went through their struggles in their lives, when interest rates suddenly spiked up to 17 to 19% and higher. So
people should stick to renting.
Well, in Vancouver, that's they can end up like in San Francisco, where there's 4 or 5 people having an income of I think it was 80 or 90,000 US dollars in order to just survive. There were 3 to 4 people in apartments trying to survive that way. That's where,
and if not that, living out on the streets, even though they have 2 jobs, right next to the giant piles of poop all over the streets of San Francisco.
Well, yeah, that's what you end up with. You end up with homelessness because of this massive push and massive manipulation, because that's what it is. Massive manipulation from the Bank of Canada of the interest rate way down below what the market should entail it to be for sustainable borrowing from anybody. There's nobody having any sustainable borrowing there at all, and it's distorted the markets completely. So there's nothing left for the people that are coming out now, as you said, the first-time home buyers. They are in deep trouble, because the Vancouver real estate markets, they peaked up and then they fell down and then they went on another tangent. So just wait until the market crisis really hit big time here in Canada. You're going to see the Vancouver housing market be way worse. That Toronto is just down a little bit, and it's not we're not even at the level where we actually have cut interest rates yet. And if you cut them, you're looking at going into the negative right now, because there's no possible way of dropping 4 to 5% down in order to protect yourself.
Well, that was one of the major reasons why they've been propping it up so much, is to avoid the inevitable negative interest rates, which comes with what we've seen in the past over and over again. They've had to drop them out dramatically in the case of a massive economic problem.
Oh, exactly, Josh, and this is what's happening in the world economy all over the place. You've seen massive amounts of debt mounting everywhere in the world, and everybody's getting into this unsustainable amount of debt. Why? Well, it's number one, because of taxation. Number two, because of the hidden tax inflation. So they're getting squeezed on both sides. Meanwhile, a lot of people are not getting their wages raised enough to cover. They only cover the CPI, the fake inflation, as I call it, what the government is telling us the inflation is. So it's just we're on an unsustainable path, and we've been there for years. I wrote this book back in 2015, and it was unsustainable back then. It's just grown to even a bigger monster right now here in Canada, and they are in deep trouble in Vancouver. There's no way out of this debt crisis that's coming down the line. And we see that with, massive, I just saw the yield curve invert between I believe it was the 10-year and the 1 year in the United States, for example.
Yeah, and on that subject, John, you mentioned the debt crisis, and we have to also talk about what they also mentioned in the article regarding pensions, because, the pension shortfall in Canada is not looking good, and overall, worldwide, that's a huge bubble, and one of the most damning bubbles, because the way that it will affect people and cause people to probably rise up in the streets. I can't see that not happening at this point when we're looking down the road, and some studies showing as much as a $400 trillion pension shortfall worldwide by the year 2050. That is massive. That is going to be something that is totally unsustainable, considering the fact that people born in the year 2007 are said to live to the age of 103, and at some point it'll just be half of people's lives on pensions. It's impossible to sustain.
Yeah, and Josh, you're seeing a whole bunch of people that think that they're going to get their pension, which they're not. What's going to happen is this bubble that they built on that side. They promised, especially to government pensions, like between 7 to 9% return on investment. Well, what ended up happening is they ended up going into a whole bunch of garbage junk bonds, investing in Venezuela debt and Argentina debt in order to actually get anything of yield, because interest rates all across the world was like next to nothing. So there was no way to actually gain anything, but other than going into the stock markets and playing around. And then, of course, that has become a huge bubble as well, where you now are seeing the pensioners, they're starting to need to withdraw their money out of the market. So who's going to buy all those assets? There's not going to be enough people to buy those assets. And on top of that, where's the money actually coming in to sustain the unsustainability of all of the shortfall, the massive shortfall? Look at the unfunded liabilities in the United States being 115 trillion officially. That's what they are promised to actually pay their constituents, like all the people that are dependent on the government for government pension and other different programs that they promised. So it's just become an unsustainable bubble. Like the debt has fueled the government spending into oblivion, and now you're seeing it coming back big time because people are not. Where are you going to exit out of this? Well, there's no way else than mass deflation. I believe, like after that, of course, the central bank in Ben Bernanke's 2002 speech, he said it well. What's going to happen next? He said, we just got to buy up more assets and print more money to sustain the system, and it's just going to end up at one point. You're going to have that little breaking point where people are not going to have enough for food or whatever it is to survive, like a France kind of moment, where you're going to have a revolution on your hand, where people are mad because they don't really understand it, but we know that, and we can tell you that it's the inflation, it's the death toll of the monetary system at the end of its life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to mention that, okay, Justin Trudeau is an idiot. I doubt he can tie his own shoes in the morning. I'm sure his wife does most of that stuff for him. But with that said, it's not. Can you imagine him writing out these policies? He doesn't know anything.
Of course not.
The premiers of these provinces don't know anything. They're all puppets. They're all puppets of a bigger order. And my point is that no matter what party is in, no matter who the puppet is, what the nice hairdo is, it doesn't matter. This is a system that's gone on for a long time. It's a dependency on the banks and the governments. It is debt subservience. It is a form of slavery, and people just walk into it with a big smile on their face, thinking that everything is going to be solved by cancer, trying to cure cancer, government trying to cure government, banks trying to cure banking. It's all a complete fraud and a scam, folks, and we need to see the shadow on the wall like it is. It's only there because we believe it is, and we give faith to it, and we give credit to it, and we should just ignore it and just try and dodge it to the best of our abilities, which is why I want to talk about solutions here, because a lot of people are going to be wondering, how can they get out of this pension system? Pensions is a big issue of dependency. It's that we depend on governments and these businesses that we work for to, us and these banks to save for us in order to keep us safe in the long term, when it does the exact opposite. People should be independent, saving for themselves, protecting their purchasing power, because all fiat currencies, for example, revert to their true value of zero, eventually going back to 1024 AD, every single one of them, 1,000 years nearly at this point, and there's no excuse for not understanding this at this point with the age of information on our doorstep, in our door, in our house, on our computers. So I look at things like gold and silver as wealth insurance, not investment advice. Our opinion, it is insurance. Like I said, it's not meant as an investment. And then, of course, food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. Be self-sustainable, independent, free, and decentralize your life. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain infrastructures that are truly decentralized and have fundamental value are incredibly important. We must get ready, be over-prepared rather than under-prepared, independent and responsible, as responsibility and freedom play hand in hand. You cannot have one without the other. Anyway, John, as we wrap this up, bottom line?
Well, bottom line, George, is I had the pleasure at New Year's Eve to hang out with Trudeau and Donald Trump, as somebody might have seen on Facebook. And I told him you can't cure, HIV with Ebola. It doesn't work. But that's the way and the way the government approaches everything is by taxing more because they don't have any more money. They have to print more money out of thin air because they're running out of money because of mass inflation. They have to pay their employees. Their employees are getting paid. The private sector are lagging behind, and it's just like ever strangling circle that's happening, that the government is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger over time versus the private sector, and then it's no more private sector left to tax, so they're just going to have to print money like in Venezuela, for example. That is where we're heading towards, Josh. It's no way out of it, unfortunately, but that's what we, as you said, the solutions that we have in order to get away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could imagine, you know how things are on New Year's. I can imagine by the end of the night you were probably talking to those cardboard cutouts. But
probably, most likely.
By the way, John, just so you know, I just want to make sure that you know, Christmas is over, and you're kind of giving me shell shock there with the Christmas tree.
Oh, yeah, it was a gigantic Christmas tree, actually. It was 12 feet or something.
On to the next. Let's look forward to summer. And anyway, thank you for joining me again, John. We'll be going into much more here at WHAM. Stay tuned. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth.
Be the change.
Like what you see here at WHAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored on YouTube, as these guys come in and flag all of our content as hate speech. Also, check out our Bitcoin address below, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check us out at steemit.com. We're at Josh Sigurdson. It's a future of social media where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency. Steem, that is. So make sure to check us out there. Make sure to join us at Anarchapulco 2019 with people like Ron Paul, G. Edward Griffin, of course, Jeff Berwick, Vid Jedlicka. So many incredible speakers are going to be speaking. It's just a massively growing event. It is something you have to see to believe. So make sure to check it out below and save money on your tickets by using promo code WHAM, that's WAM, and I hope to see you there. Also, check out our newsletter as we are getting demonetized and censored and all that. We don't know what comes next, so we have an email, worldalternativemedia@gmail.com. Send us an email with subject line YES, YES, and we will include you in the newsletter where we will continuously keep you updated. So until next time, thanks for watching, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.